Okay. Hannah, you're here with us again. This is our follow-up from the first interview, and I'm so thankful for having you here. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about a routine with our diet that's going to help our mental health. So thank you and welcome back.
Thank you so much, Elaine. It's so nice to be here again, talking a little bit more in depth about meal planning and mental health. I can't wait to talk about it in more depth.
Perfect. So last time we talked about a recipe that I'm going to be sharing, but tell us a little bit of how a day looks. We didn't talk too much about caffeine, and that's what prompted this second interview to know a little bit about the routine. What does it look like for someone that wants to increase or improve their mental health based on their diet?
Yeah, this is more of like a how-to, like practical tips edition of last time. And so with caffeine is actually an interesting one because it's been shown to actually improve mood for most people. However, if you have, mental health conditions or imbalances such as depression, anxiety, nervousness, even something like chronic pain that is related to the nervous system, we want to actually minimize caffeine intake because it's a stimulant, right? And so it can actually overstimulate our nervous system and cause the release of the excitatory chemicals in the brain, the neurotransmitters, that then take us to, that can heighten our anxiety and make chronic pain worse, for example, and make the sympathetic arm of the nervous system, which is like when you're anxious and you're kind of like fight or flight, that can be worsened with caffeine intake. So we have to be really cognizant if we have an imbalanced nervous system of caffeine. If we don't, coffee in itself is really interesting because coffee, if you're already in a calm state, if you're a person that's like really calm and reserved, not anxious, not like that's not me, I'm always anxious. If you have coffee, it will actually promote that state of calm, which most people don't realize, right? But if you are already an anxious person, it will promote that state. So it's a really interesting area. So you have to really tap into your own state of the nervous system. How are you feeling? Are you more of an anxious person? Are you more of a calm person? And just knowing that, okay, if I drink this cup of coffee, the state will actually be enhanced.
Very interesting because I do actually know people that when they drink coffee, it feels like they're more sleepy. And it's very rare to hear that, but it's probably just because they're enhancing that person's mood.
Yeah, it's to do with the adenosine neurotransmitter in the brain. And I don't know the exact pathway, but when I heard about it, I thought it was so interesting. And I know people like that too, that get sleepy or they fall asleep, and they call it the caffeine coma. They fall asleep immediately after having coffee. And I'm like, oh, not me. I'm awake till 5 a.m. if I have coffee after 1 p.m. So yeah, it's very interesting.
So it does go back to also getting to know yourself because not everything is going to work the same for every person.
Exactly. So just tapping into how am I feeling today? Like how is my nervous system feeling today? We want to be more in parasympathetic mode than we want to be in sympathetic mode most of the time. So that, again, just like being calm and being present rather than, on the attack, right? Like fight or flight. And so we want to be in that state more so typically, but just to like check in with yourself in the morning and just say, hey, how am I feeling today? Really
Love it. So tell us, how does a typical day looks like?
For me?
For you, and what should it look like to be able to enhance our mental health?
Yes. So last time we talked about all the different nutrients that are important for enhancing mental health. And I think the main ones to go back to, I mean, we all know about omega-3 fatty acids being really, really important for our mental health because those fats are the ones that actually nourish the cell walls of our cell walls of every single cell in our body, but they also have a neurotrophic effect in the brain. So they actually enhance mental health that way. And so omega-3 fatty acids are very important to have in your diet. Then we have the B vitamins that are very, very involved in our mental health, to the point that when we have mild depression, many cases of mild depression are actually a result of deficiency of the B vitamins. So omega-3 fats, B vitamins, vitamin D also is very important because it's involved in serotonin and melatonin production and regulation in the brain. So we want to make sure that we're getting our our blood tested for vitamin D to see where we're at, and then supplementing with vitamin D or consuming foods that are high in vitamin D naturally. Those are the main ones, but also we talked about last time antioxidants, polyphenols that actually nourish the brain. And those are also, well, I would say as important as the others. So we want to focus basically on having a high consumption of antioxidants in the body throughout the day, because antioxidants do fall every 2 hours in the bloodstream. Making sure that we are getting an influx of omega-3 fatty acids, and as well as the B vitamins, as well as vitamin D. Those are the main nutrients. And then there's also hydration, because our body is made up of 70% water. So we have to make sure that everything is kind of together. So to put it all together, what I tell my clients, or I ask them to please consider, is to do a hyper nourishing smoothie every single day, especially if they're dealing with a health condition. So if they're healing from something like depression, like anxiety, like chronic pain, cancer, recovery from an addiction, for example, because I work with a lot of clients undergoing that as well, or going through that as well. Lupus, any sort of autoimmune disorder. We want to focus on having a daily smoothie. So what I do is I make one by Dr. Brooke Goldner. Lillian, we have the recipe. It has about, I would say, 8 to 12 cups of leafy greens in it. So 75% of your blender is leafy greens. So leafy greens are going to give you the antioxidants that include polyphenols. They're going to give you omega-3 fats, which most people are not aware of, that leafy greens do contain omega-3 fatty acids. They're also going to give us a lot of fiber. So many vitamins and minerals, of course, including B vitamins, including iron and calcium, etc. And then we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of flaxseed that's ground up, because flaxseed is the richest source of omega-3 fat on the planet. And usually when I see recipes, and I was doing this myself, it's usually 1 to 3 tablespoons of ground flaxseed in a smoothie, but actually we want to do a 1/4 cup to really maximize the anti-inflammatory effects and the brain nourishing effects of omega-3 fats. And then we're going to fill the entire blender with water, filtered water, and add a little bit of fruit just to make it palatable and easy to go down. And so I've been doing this myself for an autoimmune condition. I have what my doctor thinks is lupus, and I had skin lesions all over my face even 3 weeks ago. And as soon as I started doing the smoothie protocol, I noticed, I just got off my medication for lupus, because it completely reversed my skin lesions. And I feel like my brain is completely different than before. I was definitely deficient, I think, probably in omega-3 fatty acids. So I try to tell my clients now to just consider doing the smoothie and to see how they feel on it. If you don't want to do the smoothie, you can do other, items for breakfast, such as oatmeal with omega-3 fatty acids, like flaxseed, chia seeds, or hemp hearts. Maybe adding some berries to that for more polyphenols. Maybe, if you want to do like a green powder, you can even do that with your oatmeal to get those leafy green nutrients in. And then throughout the day, another thing that we really want to focus on with mental health is making sure that our blood sugar is stable, because our blood sugar stability influences our mood swings, right? Liam, you're probably aware of this, right?
Yes.
We have those like spikes and crashes, and we feel great, and then all of a sudden we have this like hypoglycemic crash where we feel low, and we feel low energy, lethargic, and then we have, people tend to opt for like, high energy, high calorie food to get themselves back up again. And so we want to avoid that. We want to avoid those spikes of glucose and insulin. So focusing on foods that are high in fiber throughout the day, so that we know that fiber, which is like the rough part of plants, like grains and vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds, the fiber actually prevents the glucose in a food from spiking your blood sugar or spiking in the bloodstream too high, too quickly. Fiber actually it's kind of like, it puts a brake on the glucose. when it's absorbed into the bloodstream. So it allows that really steady, really steady kind of increase in blood sugar, and then a nice kind of steady level throughout the day. So again, just going for high fiber foods throughout the day. So those again, like would include grains like oatmeal, brown rice, even quinoa, which is actually technically a seed, but I tend to put it into the category of grains because sometimes, we do eat it that way. And then focusing on foods like legumes, beans and lentils, veggies, of course, fruit as a snack, nuts and seeds, especially omega-3 rich seeds like flaxseed, hemp, and chia.
So I've heard it many different ways, and you just mentioned the snacks of like the importance of maybe having like 5 small meals a day, like breakfast, a snack, lunch, snack, dinner. Do you agree with that? Like snacking in between your meals? Or what will it look like from your experience?
Yeah, so when we're looking, honestly, it depends on the person and what we know, if they have like type 2 diabetes and they tend, they might want to eat more throughout the day. But again, focusing on healthy foods to eat throughout the day, like 6 small meals, for example. But typically, I actually don't recommend snacking. I really do recommend focusing on making sure that your meals are balanced so that you don't need to snack. Because if you're focusing on, like, for example, the smoothie that I'm having in the morning, I am full until like 1 or 2 o'clock if I have that smoothie, because it's like 2 liters of water with a ton of fiber, lots of healthy fats in the flaxseed, lots of complex carbohydrates in the leafy greens and the fruit that I include, which are usually bananas or mangoes. So I am full until after lunch usually. So I don't really have to snack. And so if you're balancing your meal with a lot of fiber, which is basically plant-based foods, any plant food will have fiber, healthy fat like avocado, maybe some, nuts and seeds in your meal, maybe some tahini dressing or like a nut butter or a seed butter, and then protein, which I do recommend, plant protein over animal protein because it's been linked to reducing all-cause mortality more so than animal protein intake. So if you're balancing your meals that way, then you shouldn't have to snack. But if you do get hungry, then opting for foods that are, again, balancing blood sugar, like nuts and seeds and dried fruit together, right? Or fruit with some nut butter, like almond butter and banana, or apple slices of peanut butter. Just focusing on healthy, fiber-rich foods.
I love it. For lunch and for dinner, I know you mentioned a little bit, but just give us a few ideas of like rice with legumes or beans, something more specific.
So honestly, with my clients, I ask them to make like a batch of a whole grain and a batch of a legume once a week. You can actually do this together. So what I like to do personally, I do brown rice or buckwheat with lentils or some sort of a bean, like a fava bean or a black bean. And I just put them together in my Instant Pot. And then I have this like mixture of a high fiber, high protein, high complex carbohydrate food that will fuel my meals throughout the week. So what you can do with that, you can make rice bowls with that, or Buddha bowls. You just have to add avocado, you can add different spices to that. You can add tahini dressing, steamed broccoli, roasted yams, fresh veggies like radishes or peppers or, cucumber, and like make your own Buddha bowl and you have that base already there. The other thing I like to recommend is making one veggie and legume based soup on a Sunday, for example. And I know in Florida that might not be like the greatest idea because it's so hot there. But in Vancouver here, it's a really nice way to have like a soup that will last you for 3 or 4 days. Then just have that for lunch. Have that with maybe a sandwich, like a whole wheat toast with avocado and sprouts or tomato slices or some grilled tofu or hummus. So like a soup and a sandwich combo for lunch. Or a wrap, like a whole wheat wrap with black beans and brown rice and guacamole and pico de gallo and any sort of like other fresh veggies like romaine lettuce and tomatoes if you want, or grilled veggies, something like that. Those are kind of the best lunch options I find. Or a salad. a really nice salad with an avocado-based dressing, some grilled tofu, or some black beans for your protein. Just making sure you're getting, a lot of leafy greens. Even if you're making soup, add leafy greens to your soup. Even if you're having a rice bowl, make sure you're adding leafy greens to that. And then for dinner, I like to just say, okay, half your plate should be vegetables, whether that's a huge salad or some steamed veggies. And then a quarter should be a whole grain. So for dinner, that can actually be like a whole wheat pasta. It can be brown rice, it can be jasmine rice or basmati rice. And then a quarter protein. So that can be, if you want to be plant-based, for me personally, that's usually grilled tofu or air fryer tofu or tempeh, or some sort of bean, like an enchilada kind of filling that I do with sauteed onion and garlic and kind of Mexican-based spices. Or you can do wild fish or chicken or whatever, protein source you'd like. So the name of the game though is to make sure that half your plate at least is veggies, and then you have a whole grain and you have a really healthy source of protein, and that will give you healthy fats and a healthy fat on top. So again, adding avocado, maybe a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, maybe some, again, tahini based dressing, which will give you protein, minerals, and healthy fats. And then having that kind of formula guide your way through your meals. And if it's confusing for some people, I always ask them to just, think about like what they're already eating. If they're already eating something like they love having chicken fingers and, for example, French fries and maybe like a Caesar salad, right? That's like a typical meal that I hear about often from my clients. Then I say, okay, well, how can we make that higher in fiber, higher in antioxidants, and provide you with a leaner source of protein and, better nutrition basically at the end of the day. So if we take the chicken strips, we can maybe get some tofu and marinate it in a really delicious sauce, maybe coat it with cornstarch or like arrowroot or panko crust, and throw it in the oven or the air fryer, and then make your own like chicken strips that are healthier. You're getting a lot of protein and minerals from that. With the French fries, you can cut up yams or potatoes, and again, coat them with a little bit of olive oil, a little sea salt, throw them in the oven or the air fryer, and you have healthy French fries that are not deep fried and that are high in fiber, high in minerals and vitamins. And then for salad, instead of a Caesar dressing, you could do like, I like to just blend avocado with garlic and lemon juice and a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of maple syrup, and make like your own really healthy avocado based dressing, and then use that instead. And again, you're getting so much more nutrition. Just, more nutrition, and just looking at where can I make a healthier swap is kind of.
Yes, I think it really sounds complicated, but I love what you just explained with the supplementing, because I think we talked a little bit about our friend that now is cancer free, but I know and culturally people eat so many different things and different variety, but for him it was more of a Hispanic meal, and being able to, he's specifically from Mexico, so how can we be able to do the things that he loves, and that have a high protein, that are healthy and nutritionist and nutrition, if I sorry, I'm lost. Nutritional, that it can be nutritional, but that still supplement some of the things that we're not giving him such a good nutritional value.
Exactly. Yeah. So just looking at like, I know that people can get lost in that too. So I just like say, okay, like if you're having a burger, why don't we do like a black bean burger rather than the beef burger? And then, or like a Beyond Meat burger before the bean burger, maybe as like a healthier transition. So it's always looking at what you're already eating and then seeing, okay, where can I fill the gaps of nutrition? Like if people are, say you're having cereal for breakfast, like a sugar laden cereal, like fruit, like I just make it like the worst of the worst. So like, let's just say Fruit Loops, and they're having Fruit Loops with dairy milk, and that's it. Well, how many antioxidants are you getting in that meal? Like really, you're getting like nothing, right? There's no antioxidants in that meal. There are no nutrients in that meal. So your brain is not going to you're not going to give yourself any fuel, right? You're only going to give yourself glucose, sugar, to fuel your energy for a little bit, but it's going to spike your sugar. It's going to crash pretty quickly, and then you're going to be feeling really, really low. So looking at like, okay, cereal, I love cereal in the morning, great. Why don't we go out and get like a high fiber, like maybe a brand cereal that's not sweetened? Maybe instead of using cow dairy, which can be inflammatory, we can use oat milk or soy milk or, almond milk.
Mm.
And then to sweeten that, we can use maybe banana slices or fresh berries, right? A little bit of cinnamon, and then throw in flaxseed on top so that we have that anti-inflammatory omega-3 rich meal. And already you've increased your nutritional status by leaps and bounds, right?
Mhm.
And I'm looking at like, okay, how much antioxidant power is this meal providing me?
Yes, I think the other tricky part, especially for someone that's beginning, is how do I even know what's nutritional and what not? If I go to the supermarket and I look at the ingredients that it has, I started using an app that's called Yuka, Yuka, and it's
Okay.
really helpful because if you have no knowledge, you don't even know what some of the things are in there. But do you have any specific tips that you will recommend whenever you're going to find, like, to really know, like, what's the difference between Fruit Loops and this other brand that seems more healthier? Because there is a lot of marketing and tricking people of like, this is healthy and this is organic and this is the best nutrition, but then when you look at the ingredients, it's like, not really.
Exactly. So I think the number one thing, you just hit it on the spot, is to look at the ingredients. Don't look at the front of the box. Look at the ingredients in the back. And if you're looking at, for example, cereal, it's hard to get a cereal that's low in sugar, but I always look at 5 grams or less for a cereal per serving. Making sure that there are, as few ingredients as possible, of course, ingredients that you can actually understand, that you can pronounce, rather than all the, if there's a ton of, different chemicals that are listed, then that's probably not the healthiest option. Looking at fiber content as well, like how much fiber does it have per serving? Again, I think 5 grams is a good bet for, for a bread or a cereal. And looking at making sure that it says 100% whole grain, 100% whole wheat if you're looking at a bread or a cereal as well, or a pasta. Because otherwise it's going to be, if it says enriched wheat flour, then you're looking at white flour. That's going to rise your, spike your blood sugar and your insulin as well, rather than having, 100% whole grain, which has the fiber intact. It hasn't been stripped of the fiber as white flour and white flour products are. And then also just sticking to, we talk, I think you probably know this one too, like sticking to the outside of the grocery store rather than the aisle section, because the aisles are where you have the majority of the processed foods, with the exception of the things like canned beans, like, looking for organic, low sodium or unsalted canned beans. You can find them in the middle of the grocery store. That's completely fine. Making sure that you're rinsing those, draining them, as if you're not making your own beans, for example. If you're buying your own rice, you'll find them in the middle of the store as well. Again, opting for brown rice, oatmeal, like rolled oats, for example, or steel cut oats over instant oats, because again, it'll be able to balance your blood sugar better that way. And then starting your grocery shopping list though with the parameter of the grocery store. So your produce section, your veggies, your fruits, your, if you're going to have meat, like maybe some wild fish, and just starting there rather than starting with processed foods.
Thank you. You just mentioned the wild fish, and sometimes there is some controversy with the mercury in it. So like wild salmon, or what do you recommend for that when we talk about wild fish?
So because our oceans are actually just so polluted these days, they're apparently, like, in terms of the nutrition the research that I read, it's really, really difficult to find clean fish these days. They're full of dioxins and PCBs, and like fish is the #1 dietary risk factor for diabetes because of the PCBs and dioxins that it contains. And some sources are now saying that farm fish, because they're more controlled in a controlled environment, are actually cleaner than some of the wild fish. So do I recommend that people consume fish? I don't recommend it. Is it healthier than consuming red meat? Yes, because in nutrition, it's always, what are you replacing something with? So in terms of protein, the best are legumes, so lentils and beans, then their products like tofu, tempeh, and then we can go into fish, then white meat, like chicken and turkey, and then we go into like, not so healthy options, which are the red meat and the processed meat. So yeah, it's tricky right now because of the way that our planet is
Got
going.
it. Okay. Going back to the smoothie recipe, I wanted to ask you some specific questions because
Mhm.
it's a little confusing also from what's out there and blenders and juicers. So what is the benefit? What's the difference first between the slow masticating juicer and the blender? And what will be better? Because I know we talked about the smoothie in some of the things that I've done with you, it was more the juicing. So if you can explain the difference between the two of them and why do you think for this smoothie recipe, it's better the blender?
Yeah, so good point, Liam, that we did talk about juicing quite a great deal with our friend who's going through cancer. And with cancer patients, juicing can be a really ideal way to get nutrition into the system really, really quickly because you're not the body isn't taxed with, digesting a lot of fiber if you're going through chemotherapy, or if you're not able to eat, if you don't have an appetite, if you have nausea or vomiting. Juicing can be a really great way to get vitamins, nutrients, and any other phytochemicals into the system within 15 minutes, right? So that's really, really important when you're undergoing, treatment and your system is already so stressed from the treatment and from the cancer itself. However, for the typical person who is not undergoing chemo or radiation or having some sort of digestive imbalances or conditions where they're not able to properly digest their food and absorb it, juicing is not ideal, or as ideal, I should say, as blending. Because when you have a juicer, like you mentioned, a slow masticating juicer. Slow masticating juicers are the best types of juicers because they're slow. And so they're able to extract more nutrition from the vegetable or the fruit rather than the ones that are centrifuge. And the centrifuge ones are just really, really fast, but you don't get as much of the nutritional value. Still, you get a lot, but not as much. But with juicing, what you're doing is you're removing the fiber. You're removing the rough part of the vegetable or the fruit. And again, this is a really interesting fact that I learned a few years ago that I actually didn't know. And that's that 80% or up to 80% of the nutrients in a food, like in a vegetable or a fruit, are bound to the fiber. So if you are juicing, you're actually throwing away 80% of the nutritional value of that food in the pulp, the fiber, the part that comes out, right? So you can of course use that in muffins and banana breads and what else, what not. But most people don't; they throw it away. So with blending, you're keeping that fiber, and so you're keeping 100% of the nutritional value of that food. And so with blending, it's also really, really interesting that when we chew our food, when we break apart the cell wall of a plant, like say a carrot, we're only able to actually get the nutrient distribution from chewing that a blender would get after 5 seconds, which is not great, actually. We're not actually able to access as much of the nutrition in a food simply by chewing because the cell walls are so small in a plant, right? But blending gets those particles down to like a very, very tiny size where we're able to digest and absorb that nutrition in a much better way than we are through just the act of chewing, which is called mastication. And so again, blending gives you better access. It just gives you better access to nutritional superiority than you could ever get with chewing a salad, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the other part is the fructose on the fruit, like when you're blending the fruits.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit more about that because I think that's also a concern of the fructose if you're putting fruits in the blender and how that affects.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the fructose concern, I think, is more people are usually more worried about that when they're juicing because you're getting that fructose, like that higher hit if you're juicing a lot of fruit. So I always say if you're juicing, keep the content of your juice to 1 fruit, such as like a one green apple, which has less fructose than a sweeter type of apple. But with blending, you don't really have to worry about it because the fructose is bound in a package with so much fiber and other phytonutrients and water, as well as all the other fibers and the other foods that you're blending. And so you're not going to get the spike in terms of glucose, because with fructose is converted into glucose in the liver. So before you can actually get like a spike in glucose in the bloodstream or an insulin spike, you have to convert the fructose into glucose first. So that takes time in the liver to do. And if you have, a high quantity of fiber and water in your smoothie, then it's going to take even more time. So you don't have to actually worry about it. And the fructose in a whole fruit, like an apple that you're blending or a banana, acts in a completely different way in the body than the fructose that you'd get from like a pasteurized orange juice or apple juice from the store. So it's literally no concern at all. And every single study that's ever been done, even on diabetics who are given, whole fruits or whole fruit smoothies, they do not experience adverse effects from fructose.
Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned for one of the recipes of like using the apple and boil it and then mix it. Do they lose their nutritional value when they're being boiled, like the fruit?
So that just depends on the food, or the plant, I should say. So for example, there are certain plants like carrots and tomatoes that you increase their nutritional value, their antioxidant status with cooking them, right? So you get more lycopene production when you're cooking tomatoes and more beta carotene production when you're cooking carrots than you do from the raw form. But then again, you lose other nutrients when you're cooking, such as like the water soluble ones like vitamin C, for example, that leach out of that food and then, into the water. So if you're making a soup, you don't have to worry about that because you're consuming that anyways, right? But it's such a loaded question because it really does vary according to the food. Yeah.
Okay, and then we talked a little bit about the supplements. That's where you started. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it from what I've heard, there is a deficiency in like some of the like you cannot get enough nutrition from even the food that you're eating. So how true is that? And then what's your stance of taking supplements?
Yeah, so there's so many different studies showing that like our soils are depleted. We're not getting as many nutrients as we used to back in the day, and there's conflicting data on that. So I mean, we can think about it all day. We can contemplate it all day, but at the end of the day, I think making sure again that your meals are balanced, that they're nutritionally as superior as possible. So again, like looking at your food and just saying, okay, like how many, knowing that antioxidants, knowing that fiber is only found in plant foods, right? Whole grains, legumes, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. Just knowing that fact that those two very, very vital components are only found in plant foods, and those are the main nutrients that we require for adequate mental health. Just knowing those things, you can just look at, am I getting enough? How can I improve my nutrition in this meal? But supplementing, I do think it comes into play, especially if we have an imbalance in any sort of like mental health condition, such as anxiety or depression. I do recommend supplements for my clients when they come to me with any of these conditions. So the number one supplement that I recommend is vitamin D. If especially for a part of the world like Vancouver where I'm at, we don't get enough vitamin D throughout the winter months. We just simply don't. So I always say, number one, let's get your blood tested. Let's see where you're at. And then typically we recommend 2,000 to 5,000 IUs a day to get the levels to like an adequate level in the bloodstream. Second, if someone has anxiety or some sort of they're overstimulated, like their nervous system is always in a fight or flight, or they have trouble sleeping, I recommend magnesium before bed. I recommend 1,000 milligrams before bedtime of magnesium glycinate that doesn't cause diarrhea or loose bowels. And magnesium is the mineral that is, it's depleted in the body through stress, caffeine intake, alcohol intake. It's water soluble, so there's no danger in taking it. And it calms the brain. So it actually, really just eases the nervous system. It calms the nervous system and enhances sleep. The next one that I recommend for mental health is B vitamin complex. So whole food based if possible. There are so many different brands that do whole food based multivitamins, such as Mega, like one of them, I'm just thinking Mega Food has a B vitamin complex that's really, really great. You can find it at Whole Foods. And it's basically just vegetables and fruits that are dehydrated and then created into a supplement or made into a supplement. So B vitamins, again, so important to supplement with if you're dealing with a mental health disorder. And omega-3. So again, focusing on, a quarter of a cup of ground flaxseed or chia seeds per day. But if you'd like to, you can also supplement with an omega-3 oil. And I always recommend algae oil because it's the direct source of omega-3 EPA, DHA. So fish, for example, contain omega-3 fats, but they only have them because they consume algae, right? So getting it from the source, algae oil is what I recommend. And it really, and every single study shows that you can get their fish oil and algae oil are completely equivalent in terms of raising our omega-3 status. So there's no adverse effects there. And honestly, Lillian, I think that's all I would supplement with. Yeah, unless there, there's some deeper sleep issues or insomnia issues, and some people will need melatonin to fall asleep, or maybe L-theanine, or maybe like a adaptogenic herb if they're really, really stressed out, such as like ashwagandha or rhodiola or rosea. Then we can look at different supplements there too, but it just depends on the person.
And I love the fact that you're mentioning doing the blood test, because sometimes we don't pay attention to those things, and it really can help you identify where your body is and what might need, right? And then I think, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. How do you balance the need for nutrition meals and the desire for an enjoyable, satisfying food in your meal planning?
Yeah, so when I talk about, increasing the plant content of people's meals to get that fiber in, to get the antioxidants and to get all the minerals and vitamins, people always look at me like, oh no, I have to like eat, a bland salad now every single day. And that's not at all what this looks like. It's like when you're focusing on a whole plant focused diet, which is what we want to do in terms of, optimizing our nutritional status, with these specific nutrients, it can be the most delicious aspect of your day, because you're now exposing yourself to such a huge variety of different foods that you may have not been exposed to before, right? And so, someone who isn't really used to certain foods like beans, for example, or tofu, and all of a sudden now they're making a recipe with, a black bean and rice burrito with guacamole and grilled veggies, and they're just like, and it's just so delicious, and they're always surprised that that was actually a really good meal, or enchiladas or whatnot, or like glazed tofu with like a miso glaze or something, and they're like, oh, this is actually just as good as having chicken. They're always really surprised, and I always say this is not meant to be bland, it's meant to be really, really delicious. And your taste buds change every 21 days. So if you've had a diet that is more like the standard American diet, right? That's low in fiber, high in, poor quality fats like trans fats or saturated fats, high in calorie dense foods, high in sodium or sugar. Your taste buds aren't gonna like the change right away. They're not. But over time, you're going to start craving different foods, like you were telling me earlier, Elaine, that like now you're craving, you can crave broccoli sometimes, and that it's true. You'll be craving healthy foods because your taste buds regenerate every 21 days, but also your gut bacteria, the gut microbiome, the balance of your gut bacteria, there's healthy and unhealthy ones. They dictate what you crave, and what you eat, like what you're consuming on a daily basis, dictates the bacteria that you're growing. So if you have a healthy gut garden with healthy gut bacteria, they're going to crave all the healthy foods that they love to eat, which are always the fiber rich foods, because the healthy gut bacteria, they only eat fiber. They don't need anything else. But the unhealthy ones love, they love sugar, and they love animal protein and unhealthy fat. That's what they thrive on. So you're going to grow your healthy gut garden, and that gut garden is going to create anti-inflammatory compounds and serotonin and dopamine for your brain. And it's going to also dictate your cravings. So just know that it takes time, and know that you can have a delicious dietary pattern that is, filled with really, diverse plant foods, and you won't be compromising on taste, hopefully.
So it's number one, understanding that it's just baby steps, one thing at a time, that it can be delicious. And also from what I'm hearing you said is trying new things, making it fun. So you also see that it's safe, it's fun, and it's going to taste delicious. For the sugar cravings sometimes, because that's what I hear the most. Oh, I'm craving sugars. It can also supplement from what you were saying before of how can we make a something that's a little bit more on the sweet side that's also healthy, right?
Yes, like using whole foods for sugar. So I like to, for example, snacking on fruit is one way to do it, or a trail mix with dried fruit like apricots or dates, or prunes with some nuts and seeds. That's also like a nice sweet kind of snack. Or having dates stuffed with peanut butter or almond butter, another great snack. Or like freezing dates with peanut butter, and adding like a little bit of dark chocolate to that. That's an amazing dessert that people love, and they're like, wow, like I feel satisfied because I'm getting that sweetness, I'm getting some chocolate, and I have a lot of fiber in that too. So I'm not craving more food because you're full. Or freezing bananas that are really, really ripe and peeled, and then blending them with some almond milk and walnuts and vanilla and maybe some chocolate, like some dark chocolate nibs, which is like raw cacao nibs, and having that for ice cream. Again, high fiber, high antioxidant value, and you're not going to be craving those, calorie dense, ultra processed foods. And just knowing, yeah, and just knowing that it does take time, and like you said, make it fun. So my friends and I, we used to do like plant-based potlucks every couple months. We used to all make like a recipe, get 8 of us together, and then try different plant-based meals to get exposed to different types of food. Or what I did when I first started eating more and more plant-based diet is I just got a cookbook that appealed to me, and then I just started making recipes from it every single day. And we loved it. My family loved it. So make it fun.
Thank you. And last but not least, since you recommended a lot of different holistic interventions from what we talked about last time with the cancer, what's your, and I know you go a lot by evidence, what's your stance on like enemas, infrared saunas, red light therapy, cold plunge, and the hyperbaric chamber? So I don't know if you have any input in that or not, and that's totally fine.
Okay, so I'll start with hyperbaric oxygen chamber. There's a lot of evidence on that therapy, especially for wound healing and post-radiation healing for radiation burns. There are actually, I think there's a whole list of different medical conditions that hyperbaric oxygen therapy has been shown to be beneficial for. So yes, that is definitely evidence-based. In the cancer clinic here in Vancouver at the hospital, we have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber for radiation patients, for example, as a delta healing. And it's also been shown to be effective, I believe, for depression and anxiety. So that is definitely something that I stand behind. I don't know enough about it, but I've heard really great, evidence as well as like anecdotal experience from my clients. The one that stands out to me that I'm going to say no to immediately are enemas, because there's no evidence showing that they're beneficial. And enemas can be dangerous if they're not, because people do them at home. And if you're doing something like hydrotherapy and you're seeing like an alternative practitioner that they use like warm water to basically clean you out, what you're not, what, and I, by the way, I've done this before myself. Like I did these things, right? So I didn't realize that when you do that, you're getting rid of your gut bacteria, the good and the bad. The bacteria that are so critical and so fragile, and it takes so long to get them back after a therapy like that. And a probiotic pill isn't going to grow them back. It takes months, right? Like 6 to 12 months on average. So just knowing that these therapies are not proven in terms of evidence-based, and they can be harmful, and you're getting rid of your gut bacteria, which dictate your inflammation in your body, and they help with food digestion and mental health. 90% of your dopamine to 95% of your dopamine and serotonin are produced by your gut bacteria. So if we're looking at our mental health, well, if we're getting rid of them in a hydrotherapy session, then we're depleting our neurotransmitters as well. Infrared sauna, great, lots of evidence there for, just promoting lymphatic flow, promoting immune system function, detoxification, cardiovascular benefits as well. Like in the sauna, 30 minutes in a sauna is equivalent to 30 minutes cardiovascular activity. So I do a sauna once or twice a week, just making sure that if you're doing a sauna, making sure that you're replenishing your electrolytes and hydration afterwards. Did I miss anything?
Cold plunge.
Oh, cold plunges are, again, the evidence there is like really, it's not conclusive for cold plunges. It's more anecdotal. People say that I feel like really calm after, I feel happier after, my inflammation is lower. Like, there's a lot of evidence for people who are suffering from chronic pain conditions. And sorry, not evidence, in terms of like anecdotal evidence of just them saying like, I feel like my pain levels are less than before I started doing this. And there's so many different mechanisms that can be at play with the fact that people feel happier, calmer, less inflamed after these cold plunges, but we don't actually know definitively what is actually happening. But there is a difference when we do a cold plunge, and that's known. But does that affect us like longer term after that? We don't actually know. But they're great, and even if there's no evidence and you enjoy it, why not do it? As long as you're not overdoing it and going into hypothermia, and that you're just staying safe, and that don't overdo it, because it actually can be dangerous, especially if stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think we missed one thing on the coffee. So getting to know yourself, but last time you were also telling me, like, what will you say, like, if you're drinking coffee and you're having some issues with sleep, what will be the best daily management dose on coffee?
Yeah, so coffee has a half-life of 12 hours. So 50% of the caffeine that you've consumed is still in your system for 12 hours after. So like, if you know that you're sensitive to caffeine, don't consume coffee after like 12. Have 1 cup or 2 cups, but before 12, and then that way your body will be able to metabolize the caffeine by the time that you're ready to go to bed. But also, alternatives like decaf coffee, or herbal coffee like dandelion root coffee, or mushroom coffee like chaga based coffees are now widely available. And then, having those with some soy milk or oat milk and frothing them, and, having them as your coffee, and that can energize you as well. And the other thing is maybe another substitute would be like matcha powder, green tea, matcha or sencha powder, and then having that instead, because green tea has caffeine, but less than coffee. And it also has an amino acid called L-theanine that's really, really calming. So you're having these like nice elevated surges of energy, but also your nervous system feels calm with green tea or matcha or sencha powder, which are just green tea powders.
I love it. And now that we're talking about the sleep,
Mhm.
um, and we talked about the meal planning for the day,
Yeah.
when should be the last meal before going to sleep? Does that affect your sleeping habits, like falling asleep, not sleeping?
It does. So the rule of thumb is 2 to 3 hours if you can. No eating 2 to 3 hours before bed so that your digestive system isn't like taxed basically, and that you're able to focus now on going to sleep, and your body is able to focus on going to sleep and not digesting your food throughout the night. And then not drinking water a couple hours before bed so you're not getting up in the middle of the night to use the washroom. And then just making, I mean, unless you're having like a magnesium powder, then you're going to be having some water, which is like a caveat, or pills or whatnot. So just making sure that you're not overdoing your water intake before bed. Yeah.
Perfect. I think we covered it all.
Yeah, I think we covered it all. Any other questions that come up that I missed, or maybe anything's too complicated?
Nope, I think we woke up, ate breakfast, planned lunch,
Yeah,
had dinner,
yeah.
get ready to bed, and we're good.
Good. Okay, perfect. And the other thing I will say is if someone's having trouble sleeping, when you wake up in the morning, the first sunrise, like when the sun just is coming up, just go outside and just look toward the direction of the sun, because that actually stimulates the pineal gland in your brain to make melatonin for when you're ready to go to bed at the right time, at the ideal time. So looking towards the sun in the morning actually regulates your sleep cycle.
Love it.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us where they can find you if they want to reach out. What
Mhm.
will be the best way, and your Instagram so they can also follow you.
Yeah, so my Instagram is back to balance nutrition, and my website is also backtobalancenutrition.com, and they can find me there. Yeah, so I'm available for any questions.
Perfect. And even though you're in Vancouver, we have used your services here in Florida.
Yeah,
So it can be 100% virtual, and you're very familiar with what we have here in the States.
yes, I am. I've been to Florida since all. I'm very familiar. Yes, yes, for sure. I'm
Okay.
available via Zoom. And if anyone has any questions, I'm also more than happy to answer them via my email. It's on my website, contact form, or even on Instagram. So very
Perfect.
happy.
Thank you so much for your time and for being here with us.
Thank you, Lillian. I appreciate it so much.